Welcome back to the SAFESECURE 360 podcast. There's safety in numbers. We're continuing our series of talking about current events, and this one's really current and really personable. Another dead police officer in Houston, Texas last week. What's going on? Why do these officers keep dying? Enough is enough. That's our topic for today. This is the SAFESECURE 360 podcast. There is safety in numbers.
The information provided in our podcasts is for general information uses only and is not intended as legal advice. The views and opinions expressed by the guests are their own. Always consult with a qualified professional before making safety and security decisions. For more information about this topic, check out our website at safesecure360.com. Well, thank you, Robert. Thank you for sitting down with us. You're the perfect person to talk to about this. You're an honorably retired police commander, and you have experience with police officers in the Houston area. So there was a warrant serve where Officer Vargas from the Brazoria County came down to serve a warrant. A guy shot someone in the leg and then went and hid in the dumpster. And when the officer found him, he shot the officer and his canine officer. Help us understand, this is a guy, Officer Vargas has a family, has children. Help us understand the reality of this. More than a headline, this is an actual human story. Something happened to somebody and their family. Help us understand this a little bit.
Let's start off by saying his name. Jesus Jesse Vargas, a deputy with the Brazoria County Sheriff's Office. That's an area kind of south of metropolitan Houston, a very quickly growing area. Deputy Vargas was a canine officer who used a canine dog for typical patrol-type dog duties, where they detect someone, track them, and then hold them. Sometimes they bite them, a suspect that's being pursued or being chased. I've seen that happen many times in the past with me. I just didn't do good around canines because I was always real nervous about them. But the canine is a very valuable asset. Deputy Vargas participated, as other area law enforcement agencies did, in a collective group called the U.S. Marshals Violent Offenders Task Force. And that group of people is assembled by area agencies giving people to that task force. And then the advantage to that is they share intelligence, they share information, they share techniques, they share compartmentalized information of things that may be happening in their area that their jurisdiction is. But now, because they join this federally oversighted and administered group, their jurisdiction expands, and so does the information and intelligence sharing expands. And then they're able to share that information and have a collective approach to solving crimes. So it's a very important task force, and they're common throughout metropolitan areas. Even some rural areas have a similar combination. This shooter in Houston, in southwest area of Houston, has this alleged offense of shooting someone else, and he runs from the police, or trying to do a warrant service, trying to effect an arrest of this person with a warrant. A warrant is something, it's an order from a magistrate, which tells you, the police officer or group of police officers, you have my authority. I believe what you said. You said that this person committed an offense. There's probable cause to exist that I believe that happened. And now I'm the judge. I'm going to issue a warrant of arrest which gives you, the police officer, the authority legally to go and find this person and use enhanced methods sometimes to be able to access them if they're hiding or they're running or someone is harboring them. And that's what happened here apparently. Deputy Vargas was pursuing this suspect with his canine dog, and the suspect not only shot Deputy Vargas, but also shot his canine. Deputy Vargas tragically and unfortunately succumbed to his injuries and died. His canine also sustained serious injuries and was treated, taken to and treated for those injuries, and apparently survived. SAFESECURE 360. We are a security consulting group located in the Woodlands, Texas. We assist our multiple clients by reducing the risk, loss, and reputation impact. We also do full security assessments on their facilities, large churches, large private schools in Texas, and we want to help you. Take a look at our website, safesecure360.com.
The problem of police officers getting shot, injured, and killed in the line of duty is becoming worse and worse every year. In 2023, that was the highest number of police officers killed in the line of duty ever. And then 2024 was an even higher number than that. It had 25%, in fact, higher officer deaths in 2023, and the leading cause of it is gunfire. This is a problem that's getting more and more dangerous to be a police officer. People are dying out on the streets. It seems like this story isn't a mainstream news story. Like when we talk about school shootings, this isn't a high-ticket news story necessarily. It's more of a local story to us in Houston. What's going on with that? There are officers that are trying to protect us and they're dying. And this, to me, is a big deal.
Being a police officer is a tough job. Being a police officer in a big city's a tough job. Being a police officer or a peace officer in a small town's a tough job. It's dangerous. The second cause of officer fatalities are traffic accidents. In 2024, 46 officers died nationally, and 52 officers shot and killed in 24. Here's the interesting part. Texas has the highest number of law enforcement fatalities. 18 peace officers in Texas in 2024 were killed. Why is that? Why are there so many officers being killed? I remember when I first joined the department in 1983, certainly our officer populations were smaller. So if there was an officer injured or an officer death in the line of duty, it was a big deal. It was a very, very big deal. Everyone knew it. The funerals were huge. There were aggressive attempts to find the person that did this, and the trials were sensational if there was one. But now, as our society grows and as our police force grows in numbers, it seems like the far distant occurrence of an officer fatality is just common now. And it's got to stop. If these suspects or these criminals who will kill or shoot an officer or challenge an officer, what do you think they would do to you as a citizen? They have no fear, whether they're motivated by drugs or they're just evil, or they're criminals. They are deciding, they know that use of force against a police officer is a bad idea. They know that if they kill an officer, you expose yourself to a capital murder charge, which could result in life in penitentiary for you if you're found guilty, or death by lethal injection in Texas. They don't care. They keep doing it. So I'm not sure that the death penalty is a huge deterrent as a lot of people think it is. Perhaps it is, but it's happening over and over and over in Texas. And we just have to put an end to this.
The police force has become sort of a divisive topic in culture. The police force has become such a divisive issue that people are almost forgetting that these are human beings that applied for a job. They went to school for this. They worked really hard. They brought home their certification to their family. Everybody cheered. They go to work, and then they're dead. And I pulled up an average age of a fallen officer as a 42-year-old person with an average of 14 years of police service and an average of 2 children. These are real people, and this is a hard job, like you said. These are families getting affected by this. It must be a complicated issue why this is happening more and more every year. Is it a matter of not enough officers in the department? Is it a matter of turnover? Is it a matter of funding? How can we understand why these numbers keep going up and up every year?
If you look at the numbers of and the age of these officers that are being killed in the line of duty, the average age is 42. So they didn't begin their career that year or last year. The average is around 14 years of police service. So these aren't rookie new officer mistakes that, well, he or she just didn't know, or he or she did some risky behavior that ended up costing them their lives. These are experienced officers who engage with someone or multiple people in situations that were just tragic in the end. You have to ask yourself, why is this happening? The public should demand that the ratio of law enforcement officers and the public which they serve needs to be closer together. It's just not realistic if you have one officer serving, let's just say, 5,000 people. It's not enough. The reactive component of policing is predominant. A crime happens, you call 911, the police officer is waiting for that call because they're on another call, and they react to that crime. They go out there, interview you, collect evidence, try to formulate a case, perhaps arrest someone. But then there's another call holding, and there's 25 more calls holding. I remember in my patrol function, we would look at a screen in our patrol car, and you may have 25 or 30 calls for service holding that are waiting for a police officer to engage them. And they could be all different levels, from something very low, like a traffic hazard or a barking dog or some type of noise disturbance, all the way up to a robbery in progress, or an event that's already happened, like someone's been killed, or a terrible traffic accident. So not having enough resources in people, equipment, dispatchers, supportive personnel limits and reduces the ability for these officers to respond quickly and adequately. And when that happens, risk goes up because the resources are not in tune with them. Are we training our officers correctly? I think we are. Our training methods and standards are very high. They're set by a group that is associated with the Texas Department of Public Safety called TCOLE, TCOLE. That's the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement. They set standards that our new and our current officers and our reserve officers must adhere to. That's just the baseline. They decide what you're going to be trained, how long that class is going to be, and how important it is. But then the departments individually take over and give you more enhanced training and give you more policy training for their applications in their department. Maybe different from department to department. But the officer safety component is the same. So I think that the answer is we need to have a more robust approach to staffing. We need to retain the trained, oriented, effective officers that we have currently. That's the biggest challenge, in my opinion, that law enforcement faces, is not recruiting, is retaining the trained experts that we have now who have 15, 20 years of service or more, but they're not. They're leaving. They're retiring. They've had enough. Police work has changed in the last 10, 15, 20 years. And they're deciding that are eligible for retirement, and they're moving on. So when that happens, you have to backfill that. There's where your recruiting efforts begin. In the past, our police officers weren't paid consistent with other industries. How much would you like to be paid to go out in a patrol car at night and answer calls for service and risk your life? What's that worth? How much? Would you do it? Well, they do it every day, every night, and it's a lot to ask.
This is a job where you have people, like you just said, it's shocking to hear it just laid out like this. It's so valuable to hear your experience of being in these places to know what it's actually like there. But there's a group of people that are not afraid of death and want to hurt you. And then there's more and more each year, there's a public that's less and less appreciative of your work. And you can go out and get killed, not even by one of the bad guys, but by a traffic stop. This is a very dangerous job. And I feel I want to express my gratitude to police officers more. How can we as the public come together and influence the way that this is getting treated? Is there a way that we can ask for more resources for the police force? How do we support the police officers? Maybe that's a better question. How can we personally support a police officer? Is there something, would a cake delivered to a police station go a long way? What types of things can we do personally? And then in policy, how can we as a public support the police more?
Unfortunately, the police and government and politics are all married together. The funding and resources that are allowed to go to police departments or sheriff's offices or state police or even federal police are political decisions that are based on committees and analysis and studies and needs and things like that. I encourage those policymakers to schedule a ride-along, to go out at night with one of our brave police officers and see what it's like to go from call to call to call to call, and the fatigue and the mental ups and downs and the types of events that they incur. It's overwhelming. What can we do? We can encourage our lawmakers to support our police. We can stop a policeman that you see in a restaurant or at a gas station or somewhere and say, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for protecting us. I know it's a tough job. I appreciate you. That goes a long way. I remember as a police officer, the holidays would come. You ask about baking things and gifts. We would, at our station, we would start getting gifts of cookies and cakes and things. I remember coming in one day and seeing a couple of different items, and then police love to eat, right? So they were eating cakes and cookies and all that. The next day I came in, there were 3 times as many. And the next day it was even more. It was overwhelming. So we actually decided to donate the donations to us. We decided to donate it to a children's center or a shelter because we had too much. That means a lot. I would be in restaurants, and sometimes people would come time to pay our bill, and we were in uniform, and the waitress would say, "Well, your bill has been taken care of." And you would wonder, "What do you mean by that?" And they would say, "Well, someone bought your lunch or dinner." And we would ask, well, you would look around or wonder, well, who was that? And sometimes they'll say they don't want you to know who they are. So I think that when that happens, it's powerful. It means a lot. It does. Because the officers that are risking their lives for you really value that.
Absolutely. And these are just people that are going through their life being very brave as a whole. There's I've heard from talking to you, I've heard about programs I'd never heard of before, like the homeless outreach team is a subset of the police force. And there's the crisis intervention team that was talking about mental health and would send mental health professionals with police officers to help these things go. Without proper funding, you can't develop these programs that are here to help the people around you. And you can't forward think things enough if you're just trying to figure out how to pay all the officers this week. So something needs to be done. And furthermore, I keep drilling this point, but it's so obvious to me as I'm sitting here that the perception of police has changed dramatically from when I was a kid. And one example of how this is going is the dog canine officer that was shot. This dog was shot twice in the neck and lived. This dog has received so much more attention in the news than the human officer with a family at home that died. What's going on here? Are we just getting desensitized to this? How have we gotten this far to where it's this bigger deal that the dog's injured?
Our news cycle is so rapid and so fast and influenced by so many things that are collectively interesting to large groups. Say, for instance, the election and the inauguration. That consumed, and it was consistent timeline with this officer's terrible death. So the news cycle, those folks decide what's important. And those news people decide how many times we're going to play this story. And they decide how much emphasis we're going to give to this. And they may decide, well, we have a lot of dog lovers that are our viewers, so let's run that story even more. Let's explore that angle. Rightfully so, that dog risked his life or her life and had injuries doing what we, the public, asked that dog to do. The police are servants. You hear the word public servant. Well, we're serving the public. And when we do so, the public is a very tough master to serve because their priorities change. And politics influences that. And you can clearly see that with homelessness. You can clearly see that with the war on DWI that we had, the war on drugs, the war on pornography. The next one, in my opinion, is the war on mental illness. How does our contemporary police deal with persons who are mentally ill, that have dementia or Alzheimer's, that have PTSD, that are schizophrenic, that are traumatically brain injured veterans who are returning? What is the common thread that runs through all of these active shooter events? Mental illness. Undiagnosed, untreated, improperly treated. We have to do better to detect and find these suspects who are engaging in pre-event behavior that results in the deaths of many people. But the officer at night on the street when it's raining and it's dark and he pulls a car over for a traffic stop has no idea if that person's mentally ill, if that person's armed, if that person has dementia, if that person has some type of cognitive mental problem, and they begin giving a series of commands, or they begin giving the approach to the vehicle, and they start talking, and then the relationship deteriorates, and the next thing you know, the violator or alleged violator in the vehicle has produced a firearm and perhaps engaged the officer in a shooting. So I think that we have to do a better job of valuing our police, supporting our police, hiring more police officers, training them adequately, and evolving in our training. Policing today in 2025 is not the same as it was in 2020. So a smart police agency, a smart political influence group that deals with them will evolve. And it's good. So I think that's a big challenge for us as we enter the new era of policing.
That brings me to another question. You've mentioned that before. You mentioned that the way policing is changing is affecting retention. People are retiring. I've heard that in teaching too. There's a lot of things that are going that way. Can you help us understand some things that have changed that are affecting people retiring earlier? And then maybe if you have any ideas, how could we solve that? How could we help this bridge the gap of people retiring at an old age rather than a young age?
Education and educators and police share a common theme. They are public servants. They are serving either school students, they're serving a police role. The public is very difficult to serve because their priorities change. Their emphasis on what's important to them changes so rapidly that a polarization sometimes occurs where part of the political organization will think this is important. Part of it may think that something else is important. So the police and the teachers in the middle trying to do the objectives of what they're told to do by the public that they serve sometimes is difficult to do. So I think that the officers that have been on the job 20 years, 15 years, or longer realize that it's much more difficult now to operate in that environment. And it's much more difficult now to see themselves 5 or 7 or 10 years down the road in the same capacity that they are now, with limited funding, with limited resources, with limited backup. And sometimes the public's opinion of police may be hypercritical and may be unrealistic and unfair. So in an effort to displace themselves from that, they decide, you know what, enough's enough. And I've seen many of my friends retire earlier than they should have, and they were experts. It's what they did. So now, to develop that new expert to take their place takes a very long time, if you're even able to accomplish it.
Well, that is really insightful as to how this is working. So just to follow that train of thought, if we keep being, I think it's really important, you said it earlier, to update training and to stay relevant. As the public changes what they want, it's really important and valuable for the police to evolve with them as well. But if we just keep getting more and more critical and losing all the good officers, then we have a police force of rookies, basically, of new people to the thing that they don't have this 20 years of experience to know what's, how to react in this situation or how to respond to a situation. That seems sort of ominous to me, that we're heading down a road where we're going to have a younger and younger police force with less experience. I think as a public, what I hear you saying is that a little bit of kindness and compassion could go a long way. If you're moved by this episode and you're out and you see a police officer, just say thank you. You don't have to buy them something. You don't have to bake them a cake. Just a thank you is enough. And maybe we can, over time, start to realize that, if you don't have police and you don't have good teachers, the society is not getting better. If no one's there to serve these people are standing, serving the public, sort of helping them develop in a way where all these people can get around each other. It seems so important to me. Is there any other important idea that we're missing in this? You're right. Enough is enough. This is crazy stuff, what we're talking about. These are outrageous numbers of deaths, and they're going up every year. Is there any other way that we can think about this or way that we can help understand? This is a tough topic, but maybe through understanding we can help let people enact change.
I think we've discussed it all already, and I think that additional resources, additional training are really good ideas. Remember, we're taking these 21-year-old people, 22, 23, 24, they may live at home, and they decide they want to be a police officer. They may never have been in a fight or an argument that was serious, and now they're solving complex family disturbances that have been going on for 10 years. They want you to solve it right now. They have to be expert drivers and never have an accident and just be a perfect driver. They have to be legal experts because the work they do ends up in court. They have to be CPR, AED, first aid experts to help someone live if they're dying. They have to be able to understand complex use of force issues and to use of force or not use force, because they'll be held to a hyper-analytical standard. So it's a tough job. Thank a policeman every time you see one is a great idea.
Well, thank you, Robert. Thank you for sharing with us. And thank you at home for listening. Sometimes it's easy to forget how numbers work. We say every week there's safety in numbers. We can affect change that we want to have. We don't have to just become one of the people that can't do anything. So thank you for listening. We hope that you can help influence your community and your friends to think more positively. We can make the world better. So thank you for listening. We hope this is getting you a more safe and secure life. And this is the SAFESECURE 360 podcast. There is safety in numbers.